absolutely delighted to introduce our next guest, who is an absolute hero of mine. She is the CEO of the Chartered College of Teachers, and it is Professor Dame Alison Peacock. And I'm going to have to sit back just for 10 seconds and gather myself, because she's actually here while Tom asks the first question.
Yeah, huge welcome, Alison. It's really fantastic to have you with us. I've been looking forward to talking to you for ages. Obviously, we've got so many things we could talk about, but I'm particularly interested in the Chartered College of Teachers and its existence and what it's for. And bearing in mind that some of our listeners, viewers are from the US, so they might not exactly know what it is. I think just as a sort of a opening question, just to get you to kind of tell people what it does and what you think its main sort of function is in the education world.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm really pleased to be here. It's the Chartered College of Teaching, both of you.
Not the Chartered College. Again?
I think we maybe should. Thank you, because I'd quite like to get the name right.
Do you know what the worst thing is, Alison? Just wait there. This is actually in my eye line. Well, I said it.
Oh, there you go. It should be behind you instead of that clock that says 3 o'clock.
Okay. Put it in front of me now to say it.
Well, no, that's quite a good thing to do, isn't it? Because why that's obviously significant, then, isn't it? It's the Chartered College of Teaching, and that's important, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, tell us what it's all about.
So, the Chartered College of Teaching is a professional body, and we are committed to raising the status of teaching in England, but not just in England. We're very keen to have a global outlook, because we believe that teachers too often don't have a say in terms of policy. They're not listened to as much as they might be in terms of what goes on in terms of school decision making. And so we want to really, as I say, raise the status and raise the calibre of teachers. So we're offering the opportunity for teachers to study to become chartered teachers, and also for leaders to become chartered leaders. And this is really about making sure that our professionals are aware of issues such as the cognitive science, issues around research that's been published over the last number of years, making sure that these things translate into practice in the classroom, and that they ultimately support the development of teaching across the piece.
So how is it? One of the things I get asked sometimes, because I often go to places and say, you should join a Chartered College of Teaching, and people say to me, what's the difference between that and the trade union? So that's the question I get asked. So I thought, well, and sometimes I think I don't give a very good answer to that. So how do you see them being separate from the sort of the trade unions?
Yeah, so in other professions, it's really, in this country, it's certainly quite usual to have a Royal College, and the Royal College of that profession would be setting the standard, if you like, and accreditation for an ongoing professional life, as it were. And so we've got unions that work with our teachers in this country, and I would be the first person to be talking about the importance of joining a union. But a union is really focusing on your rights and your workforce conditions, and of course they do also support CPD. But a chartered college is about your professional career. It's about how you build a portfolio over time that enables you to be the best qualified teacher that you can be, and also gives you recognition for that, and then also provides that voice on pedagogy, on research, on evidence, which is almost always equivocal. But that whole conversation about what can we reliably say that we know makes a difference in our classrooms, and how can we amplify that? So that's the role of the professional body. We don't see ourselves as a CPD provider. Ultimately, we will be the standard setter. We would be the ones that would accredit CPD, and we've currently got a project that we're working through with the Wellcome Trust, and with Sheffield Hallam and with David Weston of the Teacher Development Trust, where we're looking at how can we quality assure CPD. But also, as I say, this notion of building a career pathway right from the very earliest days, so that you know what you're talking about when you're in the classroom and you can reflect on that, and you're not subject to all of those edu myths that were circulating around a number of years ago, that people kind of spoke about as if it was research, but of course it never was.
No, and they're still there, aren't they? So Emma, what's been your connection with the Chartered College of Teaching so far?
absolutely loads, really. I was lucky enough to be nominated for fellowship by Sam Twistleton, great friend and colleague of Alison's. And I also use it an awful lot with my early career colleagues because I work a lot with NQTs and teachers in the first 5 years of their career. And like you say, there's a wealth of information out there which you could get completely lost in, completely drowned by, and with no sense of actually how to curate what's the best and what's not. And the idea of kind of quality assuring is very reassuring when you're providing your own CPD, because you can look at the resources that are on the Charter College and know that they are right. And also you can confidently direct other colleagues to the resources that are on there, knowing that they are absolutely first class. And I'm constantly falling over myself, telling my colleagues, if you do one thing in the first few months of joining the profession, either as a trainee or, you know, in your first job, join the Charter College, because they are your friend, they are your advocate, they are your CPD quality assurer, they are the kind of the voice of the profession. And the more I get involved with the Charter College, the more I realise how much I've missed it, or missed having that sort of thing throughout my early career. And throughout,
was there was nothing. So how's it? I mean, I'm interested in how it's going, because I was aware of its sort of early stages, lots of debate around what it should be and who should be responsible for it. What's your sense of how it's going in terms of its progression as a body? It's quite new, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're just over 3 years old, but we're now independent of government funding, and I think that was a really significant point. So at the end of March, that funding came to an end, and we are able to be self-sustaining. So we're very keen that we maintain the independent stance. I think, to be fair, you know, we've tried right from the very beginning to embody the notion of being apolitical, because that feels really important. So we try really hard to sort of stand above the ideological debates. We recognise there's always going to be a plurality of voices, a plurality of views, and actually, I've been an educator all my life, and I love talking about education. It would be very boring if we all agreed over everything. There are certain areas where the evidence is pretty strong, and so areas like early reading, you know, being able to teach and use phonics as a way of learning to read. There's pretty much, the debate has been won in that space. There are lots of other areas of education where that might not be the case. And it's a case, I think, what we try to do is to provide the evidence in a way that colleagues can engage with. We don't dumb it down, but we're trying to encourage the debate, but also enable the debate to be an informed debate, as opposed to a debate just based on opinion. It's a mixture of the two.
Tom, do you read you're a member, first of all, Tom?
I am a...
Oh, boy.
I have the badge as well, yeah. Yeah, I read the Impact magazine. Look, here.
I was just about to say, that in itself is just absolutely unbelievable in terms of the quality of the articles in there. And what I particularly like is the blend of articles from researchers and kind of science, and then articles that are from practicing educators in school. I think it would be very easy to just have research or just have kind of anecdotal or practical evidence from schools, but that blend is absolutely it's so strong. And especially the early career publication as well. As soon as my early career colleagues get their hands on that, they're hooked. It's like that's the quality you're looking for.
I think it's, for me personally, as someone who's no longer a practicing teacher, obviously, I think it's brilliant to feel the sense of teaching as a profession coming through those journals. But I'm interested in, you know, what your challenges are. You know, so to me it feels like pretty much a no-brainer that if I was a teacher, I'd sign up. But why doesn't everybody just do it? You know, what's stopping people? Is it they don't know about it? Is it they think it's expensive? Or do they feel that it's not run enough by teachers? I mean, these are all things which you pick up. You know, what's your sense of that kind of those issues that you're wrestling with?
So I think it's probably a combination of all kinds of things. I think there's something in the teacher psyche that says, I work really, really hard. I'm quite happy to spend my own money buying Pritt sticks for my class, but I don't feel I need to spend money on my own professional body. Joining a union is what you're told to do right from the start. It feels as though that's the thing that you do. And when you start in your career, people will say to you, you have joined a union, haven't you? Just in case something goes wrong, supposing you fall over with that pair of scissors and someone gets hurt. So there's a kind of a sense of this is what you do. What I would hope for is that, and this is one of the reasons that we're working really closely with teachers as they begin their career, is that teachers, as they come into teaching, it's just the thing you do, just the same as joining a union. You join your professional body. So we've just established an early career hub on the Chartered College website. It's being promoted this week, in fact. And this is an area where we're really keen that, particularly this year, with teachers having missed so much of their training, are able to go online to engage in conversations. We've got nearly 200 video clips of classrooms with real children in them. Who knew? That where we can encourage people to reflect on what they're seeing and how that might impact on their own practice. We've got lead speakers like Doug Lemov, who spoke, he provided a podcast for us the week before last, and we had several thousand participants on that podcast, and now that's available online for teachers to join. If you're a trainee teacher, it's free. So, yeah. There's really no barrier other than a commitment to wanting to improve your practice. That is the only barrier. And for NQTs, it's £1.88 a month. So it's a tiny fee, but there are still those who would say, well, they should provide it for nothing. I don't know who they are because we're a charity, but we can't provide it for nothing, but we're trying to provide it for as close as nothing as we possibly can. It's, the membership is really, I don't think the cost ultimately should be a barrier. I think it's more to do with behaviours that become, this is what you do, and the other teachers tell you this is what you do, and this is how you contribute, because it's our profession.
Would you find, do you find that people you meet, like, does everybody know about the COT or the CCT or the Chartered College of Teaching? Do you think it's
growing,
widely known enough?
It's definitely growing, and I think that anybody who's involved in initial teacher education is getting that word out there. So I think that the next wave of early career teachers coming through will be much more well versed in what the college can do for them throughout their career. But I do think, unfortunately, there is in certain sectors of the teaching profession, there's a little bit of sniffiness about it. And I don't know what that's caused by or why. And I wish it wasn't there. And the more people who get involved with it, I find fewer people who get involved with it who then have that same sniffiness. It's almost like, well, I didn't think of it myself, so I'm not going to be part of it. Rather than actually, I'm going to have a look at it. I'm going to become part of it, add my voice to the debate. Because the other thing is, if you don't necessarily agree wholeheartedly with something, then join that conversation and have your voice heard. So that things do become representative. Don't not join something and stand on the sidelines and then complain about something. It's just, to me, that seems ridiculous. So I think that early career colleagues coming through will know more about it. I think anybody who's been involved in the C-Teach programme sings its praises unbelievably. I was talking to a colleague who said she's done doctorates and all sorts, but actually that programme was the most rigorous and wonderful career-changing CPD she's ever had in her career. And I think that once you get involved in it, then you can't help but become an advocate for it. But unfortunately, some people are a bit kind of, it's new, it's different, therefore I don't like it, or I didn't think of it, I'm not going to.
Do you come across this sense of teaching, like practicing teachers feeling that they're like, I mean, here we are talking, and I feel I'm tripping up on myself on this because I feel like I'm a teacher, but I don't get paid as a teacher. I'm no longer teaching as such, but I feel like I'm in the profession. And that's a bit of a sort of waffly line to walk, isn't it? And I know there are some people who feel like super passionate about this, that their profession should be represented by people who are doing it, rather than people who perhaps did it before. And what's your view of that?
So I think that's fair enough. I mean, I've spent my whole career working as a teacher. Then as a head teacher, I still consider myself to be a teacher, but I'm not currently running a school. But a lot of the people that we work with, the people who write for us, who write for our journal, are practicing teachers. A lot of the colleagues on our council are practicing teachers. We have reference groups. We run all kinds of activities to make sure, we've just sent out a survey over the last couple of weeks during COVID-19 to hear from teachers about how this is impacting their practice, what they feel they will need to have support with as they come back. So if you were teaching all day long, it would be pretty hard to also run a professional body, I think, and be a good teacher. So clearly there are people who need to be involved in organising this who are not currently teaching. I think that it's a bit of a red herring, really, to say, well, this isn't run by teachers, because everything that we do is informed by what's going on in our classrooms. And we're very respectful of the wide debate that happens. And I think that matters as well. Just this morning, I was on on the Jeremy Vine show on Channel 5, probably nobody watching, who knows. But anyway, and they wanted someone to sort of say, well, what if parents aren't sending their children back to school today? What do you think? And I was able to respond both from my perspective of having a career in teaching and having been a head teacher, but also from the perspective of, this is what we're hearing from head teachers all across the land at the minute. This is why we need to support them. They should be trusted. We need to listen to them. Local decisions are being taken, different opinions, different circumstances, different schools, but we should trust the decision that our teachers are making. And that's what a professional body is for. We're here to amplify the voice of the profession. And I think, to be honest, I would like to say, I think we've done pretty well. There are lots and lots of organisations that get money from government that just disappear once the money disappears.
Yeah.
And the fact is that we have been completely resolute from day one that this is an organisation that needs to sustain into the long term on behalf of our teaching profession. And it's around enhancing this notion of what does it mean to be a professional. So of course it is about, intuitive practice. But it's also intuitive practice informed by big ideas and informed by debate and informed by reading and all of the things that our most engaged teachers want to do. And we all know the cynics who sit in the staff room and say, well, we tried that 35 years ago, I'm not trying that again. But we're not trying to work with those teachers. We want to work with the teachers who are really keen constantly to try and improve their practice and to share their ideas.
I meet those teachers all the time. Sometimes I think those teachers, what they need is validation, because they feel like, they honestly say this to me, they feel like they've been told off for 30 years.
I agree.
Because they teach in a fairly traditional way usually, and they feel that that's been scorned, and they feel like they're kind of resentful of the way they've been treated by the profession. So I feel like there are people who have a sort of built-in wall of cynicism, which I kind of, when you actually unpick reason, you think, well, I kind of understand why. Not everyone's been in a school with great CPD. I'm fascinated by this thing of the quality assurance role, because then that gives you a kind of some power in some way, doesn't it? Like it's like kind of, you're going to have status there. So what's that all about? How are you going to sort of, get involved with school CPD and deal with that? I'm really interested in that. Okay,
so there's two things. The first is that the chartered status that we have developed is a really rigorous assessment framework, actually. And to become a chartered teacher, you have to be assessed against your professional knowledge, professional behaviours, professional principles. And the assessments include examinations alongside video capture in your classroom, alongside a sort of viva that you have where you're explaining what you've done to develop your practice. So you can't become a chartered teacher by just going up in the loft and getting down a few things that you did a couple of years ago and saying, look what I've done. It's not a portfolio-based approach at all. It's directly linked to your practice in the classroom. Now, that framework is one that we want to hold on to the assessment for, because we believe that we can then maintain a really high standard. But we don't have to provide the face-to-face training for that. We can enable other people to do that. So already we're starting to work with providers across the country who are going to be running the Chartered Teacher Programme. If we weren't in lockdown, They would have been doing it now, but we've just pushed that back slightly. The same is true for the chartered leadership route. So ultimately, we will be the body that provides the accreditation. Then what we can start to do is to talk to other providers, maybe places like Ambition, who are providing really high quality CPD. And we can say to them, where is the read across with what we would need to be able to see for a teacher to become chartered, whether they're a chartered leader or a chartered teacher? Is there something that if you do an MPQ that you can do another couple of months' work that means that you can provide the evidence that's needed, that you can do those assessments and then become chartered? So essentially what we're doing is we're saying you can take these programs and you can provide another layer, which then means that we've really rigorously assessed your capacity to say that you could become a chartered teacher. And what we're doing alongside that is also working with other organisations to decide how best, and this is piloted at the moment, but how best can we help CPD providers to make sure that they are adhering to the kinds of qualities that we outlined in the recent DFE work on teacher professional development that David Weston led on. I was a member of that group. How can we best enable the system to do this? So we're developing this at the moment, but the aspiration is that nobody in the future goes to another day's course and all they can come back with is say, well, the lunch was good. That's just a waste of everybody's time and money. It really is.
Go on, Emma.
No, I was just going to say, I could listen to Alison all day long, because, especially about the quality assurance of the CPD programs. It's so important across the profession. But just before we kind of went, I wanted as well to say thank you for everything that you've done during COVID as well, Alison, because I know you really have been amplifying the voice of the profession, and not to underestimate the impact of the messages that you've been sending out via social media and online, because I know that it's lifted so many people and made them feel that they are not a lone swimmer in a sea of chaos, but actually they are a powerful professional body with a voice. So I just wanted to say thank you before we went.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I mean, I would just say on that, when this crisis struck, we were all taken aback, and it was still is, but particularly at the beginning, it felt incredibly frightening. And I just remember thinking, what would I do if I was still a head teacher? And I thought, well, what I would try and do is I would provide hope, and I would try to help people to feel buoyed up and to think if one thing had gone well today, that would be worth remembering rather than all the things that hadn't. And so I've tried to build on that from my role at the Chartered College. And I think people have appreciated it. And that's alongside the work we did with ITV around the Britain Get Talking. There was a mental health campaign that coincided very well, where they were asking for people to submit videos. You did one yourself, Emma. And so really trying to help people see that this was a national moment where teachers were actually first responders. We had our health service out there really doing the best they absolutely could, and they've been amazing. But in our communities, who's been there? The teachers have been there. They've been giving out food, they've been providing resources, they've been trying the very best they can and not taking any break to do that. So I felt it was an important moment. I still think it is an important moment, actually, but thank you for that.
Definitely.
No, well done. Thank you very much. And thanks for coming on the show. It's been a real honour to have you with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
What an interview with Professor Dame Alison Peacock. I could listen to her and talk about the Charter College forever. Everyone knows I'm a massive fan of the Charter College of Teaching, and it was really interesting to listen to your reflections on that, Tom. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think she's fantastic. I have to say I'm very impressed with her. I thought the way she is aware of the issues around the college and what it's trying to do is fantastic. I've always been a big admirer of her since she was a head teacher and one of the early kind of executive head teachers running a group of schools, and she wrote this great book, Learning Without Limits, and the whole culture she developed in her school. So for me, when someone has sort of walked the talk in their own school, I just think that for me commands a huge amount of respect, and I've always felt that about her. I do think there's a sort of political dimension with the college, which I think is really interesting. It's representing teaching, the whole of teaching. And of course, there's a political structure there, and there have been debates around that. And I think those will continue. But I think you can't argue with the quality of, say, Impact magazine. It's a proper, hardcore, research in paper, magazine, which is full of stuff. And the quality of that, and some of the other things that they've done, I just think, whatever the noises are around it, which are legitimate debates, that what they've delivered so far, and to the point of getting kind of up and running without any more government funding, I think, well, they're delivering, aren't they? And I think that's the deal breaker for me.
100%.
I just hope they, and I feel that 3 years. It's amazing, isn't it, how something. Now, in the long run, this will just be we'll see as the early days. So it really is still very embryonic, and I think it's important to allow it time to kind of fully develop further. I thought she was really, really, sound there, actually.
And the potential of the work of the Charter College as well is enormous. I know they work a lot with early career teachers, but with the new Chartered Leadership qualification and the C-Teach qualification, there is the potential there for everybody at every level to contribute their voice, their experience, their learning to the Charter College. And I think, as I said before, I would have loved to have had this, earlier on in my career, because I haven't found anything yet which is even on a par with it, both in terms of CPD and voice and advocacy for the profession. So, as I tell my early career colleagues, if you do one thing, just one thing, go and join the Charter College.
Yeah, and I do think, and we discussed this earlier, that if you don't like something, you've got to get involved to shape it. Haven't you? It's like you've got to kind of be part of something. And so I love this idea, and I think this is where the international dimension comes in, of across the world, really, there being, every country probably needs this, a sort of ladder of progression that we're constantly developing as teachers. I personally, I'm not so bothered about the status aspect, because I don't think that matters so much. It's more what that signifies in terms of real learning and real rigor. So as long as those things have got teeth to them, like it's got to mean something to be a chartered teacher. It's got to mean something in terms of rigor. So that if you're if you're wearing that badge, it matters. Anyway, I was encouraged, and I think she's a great advocate for teaching generally. So lovely to talk to her.
Oh, I absolutely adore her and the work of the college, but that's well known.